Sugar Bowl that we had last night, and man, this one did not disappoint. Plenty of offense to be had, but man, Michael Penix and those Washington Huskies were on a mission, dude. I had several notes from this game, and look, Washington gets the credit. Their defense played really well, I thought, for the most part. Washington set up Texas with a short field at one point, spotted them a touchdown, basically. But Texas had way too many penalties. They had just a ton of penalties in this game, and I'll pull up the total number, but I know there was like 6 offensive penalties in the first half for Texas. Not going to get it, and it was a lot of like moving around at the line and false starts and things like that. It was just this Texas team was never in a rhythm, it felt like, and they were running the ball really well, and every time they ran the ball really well, they started trying to throw the ball, and I just couldn't figure out why they couldn't stick to the run game a little bit more in that one. But look, Jaden Blue had a nice game. A.D. Mitchell finally yells at the coaches enough to and tells them to give him the ball, and he does score after that. So there was some good things there for Texas, but that first half just killed them, man. What was your thoughts about Texas in this one?
Yeah, with Texas, I agree. They were averaging between Baxter and Blue close to 7 yards per carry. I mean, 6.8.5 yards per carry, I think, is probably about where it's at. So if that's the case, why aren't they running it more? And I heard in the broadcast, they were saying that Sarkisian had like 30 scripted like third down, third and short plays or something like that. It's just a very scripted sort of game plan. And sometimes I wonder if that's the best route to go, because I mean, are you really getting a good feel for the game if that's kind of how you're planning things out? Seems like, I'm no play caller, but it seems like you could be a little bit too prepared in some of those cases, and you kind of miss on sort of the feeling of the game and how that goes. So maybe that had a little bit of something to do with it. I'm no expert in that category for sure, but ultimately I thought that Quinn Ewers played kind of below average in a lot of ways. He too was missing a lot of the intermediate throws. It just seemed like this offense was not the same offense we saw against Oklahoma State, and I thought that we would have seen a lot more firepower coming from them against a Washington defense that is a lot better than people think. When you look at Washington and all the points that they gave up earlier in the year, a lot of that came when a few of their secondary players were out, and on the back end, they really weren't doing a good job in protection. And in this game, I thought they did a great job of protection against arguably their toughest opponents as far as their skill position players. So I just think you have to credit Washington a ton defensively and offensively. I just, out of all the 4 teams that were in the playoffs, I thought that Washington played the best game, overall. Texas offensively on the O-line, I thought that they did a pretty good job, but it seemed like Washington was getting some pressure on, getting some pressure on Quinn Ewers. And let's see, they ended up only with 2 sacks, but it sure seemed like they were in the backfield wreaking havoc a lot more than that. And up until like the last 2 drives, we didn't see Texas responding to that very well until, their backs were up against the wall. Had they played like that all game, they probably win the game. But, you always have a different game plan once you get punched in the mouth, right?
Yeah. Well, as I said, the penalties were a big hit for Texas as well. 10 penalties in this game. Anytime you're getting into double-digit penalties, you're affecting your game plan a lot. And maybe you're right with the whole scripted drives thing. I'm not sure. That it definitely something seemed off, and the rhythm was not there. And I feel like if you were to script a bunch of plays or whatnot, you're not really going with the flow of the game
Right.
necessarily. You're going with some kind of recipe, and you're not just kind of letting the chef do his work in the kitchen. And so that was definitely interesting to watch. But kind of moving over to the Washington side of things, first of all, congratulations to all the Washington fans, because what an amazing season it has been. 10 games in a row now, Washington has won by a single score or less. That is a record among bowl teams. That's never been done before in the bowl era. That's just unbelievable. And they're just a flat out good football team, man. They're just a flat out good football team. These wide receivers are all time. This is probably my favorite group of wide receivers that are on one team together in college football, I think, that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's remarkable, and it's raw talent and speed and ability and all that stuff, but it's Kalen DeBoer that's pulling the strings, man. And this guy is so good at getting your defense on the field in a package that he wants to go against. He won't let you off the field, right? And then he'll isolate Rome Odunze or McMillan or Polk, whoever, whatever flavor he's feeling. And they're going to put you on an island out there, and you better be able to cover them. And we said before this game, part of the reason that we didn't like this matchup for Texas was that secondary. And boy, howdy, did they get torched. And you know
Mhm.
what? They were in position, though, a lot. I mean, they really were. And it was just, catches that were just dropping out of the sky at just out of nowhere into the breadbasket. There was nothing they could do.
Yeah.
There was absolutely nothing they could do. Michael Penix was a man on a mission. He has been really ever since that middle part of the year. I think it was injury stuff is what it was. He kind of had some issues there in the middle of the year with efficiency and things like that. Boy, he looks healthy. We saw his legs help them out in several times in this game, and it was much needed to aid their rushing game. Washington was not able to run the football in this game, and now it looks like they're going to be down Dylan Johnson for the national championship game, which I'm sure we'll get into later this week. And that caused a whole ripple effect of shit at the end of that game too, because Dylan Johnson, there's like 50 seconds left in this game or whatever it is. Dylan Johnson goes down, and the clock is supposed to be running, but the clock has to stop for Washington's own injury timeout.
Yeah.
And so now you're in a position where you can't run the clock the way you need to and have to give the ball back to Texas. And that just caused a whole, just the end of that game was tense, amazingly tense. Not Florida. Texas went on down the field and damn near scored. And it was, I know, a tight bunghole situation for all the Washington fans, because I was on the edge of my seat as well, mainly like this.
Yeah.
Like, I could barely watch. But again, Washington undefeated, 14-0, going to play the Michigan Wolverines. Holy cow, man. What a season for Washington. What did you think about the Huskies in this one?
I like I said, I thought that they played an outstanding game overall. Michael Penix had 430 yards in this game, and I think people are seriously questioning whether or not they should have selected him on their Heisman ballot after this game, and it further proves the point that I've always made, that we should wait until the end of the entire season to deem a Heisman.
Yeah.
Like, how do you have a true Heisman if you don't include the best games? And moving into next year, you're talking 4 games that you might miss of one player, if you do the Heisman in just the regular season. So that I think needs to change starting next year. And this is a great example. Nobody, I don't think, would in their right mind would have selected Jaden Daniels over Michael Penix after that performance, because that was just outstanding against great talent.
Yeah.
Very talented.
Meanwhile, Jaden Daniels is sitting out of his bowl game.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? How is that fair, man? You're absolutely right.
And you if you do that, you help solve at least a couple of your better players in college football. You help solve the problem of them opting out when they're not in the playoff, right? Because they're going to want to win the Heisman, so they would play, right, to get that opportunity. Um, anyways, that's a different topic. It sounds like a good summer topic for us there,
Hey, and
Mark.
I tell you what else would make them want to play for that Heisman, and give them a cash $500,000 cash prize with it, and you'll
Yeah,
see some people really competing for it.
that's right. But going back to Washington, one of the biggest head scratching moments to me was continuing to run Dylan Johnson. Um, I think Rogers was doing a pretty fine job, actually averaged more yards per carry than Johnson, and now you're going into a national championship and you're without him,
Yeah.
probably. I mean, with the way he went down at the end, I just, you knew he was hurt in the first half. You could tell he was hurt. I just didn't feel like it was necessary to keep him out there, especially on that last drive, right? Where you're running him not to get a first down, but to keep the clock running. So why not give it to the backup? You know, it didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if maybe I'm missing something, but it seemed like there was no reason for him to be carrying the ball 21 times in this game when he really wasn't even that effective. He carried the ball 21 times for 49 yards, did have 2 touchdowns,
Mhm.
but the injury came after those 2 touchdowns, and there were signs of it earlier on. I was kind of shocked. I mean, I was shocked that initially that they kept him in, but then when he actually got like seriously hurt, that's when I was kind of like, man, this is going to come back to bite him, because I
Yeah.
do think that they need him next week.
Yeah, yeah, and we're gonna get into that, national championship game just a little bit today, and we'll break it down fully later this week with all the stats and stuff, but I agree with you. This is a damning blow, because this is a big part of this offense, and I he this Washington run game is not efficient, okay?
Right.
It hasn't really been that efficient all year. They've had a few games here and there, and look, their best offensive games have been whenever they've ran the ball effectively.
And
They're
in
not an
particular,
efficient team.
lately,
What's
they
that?
they had gotten better running the ball lately,
They did. At the end of the
and
season, they
with
got a lot
Dylan
better at it.
Johnson. Yeah,
They their big thing is they gotta hit triple digits in rushing yards a game,
yeah.
and it just totally sets up everything else. That it they kinda they as much as they throw the ball, they still run to set up the pass. It's an interesting system that they've got there, but, um it's just part of their repertoire, and the more effective they are running it, the more effective that offense is, and all they need is just a little spark out of the run game. So I think you're right. I mean, I don't understand what the point was. I think he was just trying to be a warrior,
Mhm.
and it's they were saying that they couldn't keep him off the field, and he had added like a nagging foot injury or whatever, but it was crazy. Everybody kept grabbing that foot. Boy, when you get hurt out there and everybody knows on the field what's hurt because every time he got tackled, everybody's like grabbing his foot. Like they're just doing everything they can to aggravate that thing and that's hey man, you get any edge you can out there. It's war. So no hate or nothing on that, but this was a amazing performance by the offense and the defense. We don't talk about the Washington defense enough, but this defense just got healthy. The secondary, the back end of the secondary, people don't realize all the stats that you want to look up on them for the season. They're kind of in vain defensively because they haven't been healthy. I mean, the whole the 8 or 9 middle games of their schedule, they were not healthy.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, right here at the end, and that's playoff ball is different, and that's what's so different about it. It's about who's getting hot at the right time, who's got the right path to the playoff, and which is going to come into play more when we have more teams, and who gets healthy at the right time. And
Yeah.
Washington was getting healthy at the end of the season, and then they got a 30-day break there, and it just seemed like it was what the doctor ordered for them. But hey, Washington wins 37-31. It was a nail biter right there at the end, but in both of these playoff games, we had defenses step up and win the game for their team. Any final thoughts on this one?
Well, I want to also bring home the point that Texas got outcoached. Steve Sarkisian got outcoached by Kalen DeBoer. I don't think
Mhm.
that this guy gets enough credit for, what he's done. I mean, um, overall record, it's like 130 something and 11, if I'm 136 and 11, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Um, absolutely incredible job. You mentioned the 30 days that you get in between the conference championship and that semifinal game, and um, you can coach up a team in 30 days and in 15 extra practices. And I think that they did a better job of preparing for this game than Texas did. A lot more sort of to play for. They were the underdogs all season long. And I think that, not enough could be said about the job that Kalen DeBoer has done, and the whole coaching staff has done with this Huskies team.
Yeah. Well, a name that you need to know is Ryan Grubb, and that's the offensive coordinator for Washington. We talked about him a little bit earlier in the episode. This was a guy that Alabama was trying to hire as their offensive coordinator last year, before they hired Tommy Rees. And you're talking about a guy who not very long ago was pouring concrete, living in his sister's laundry room. I mean, and if that don't tug on your heartstrings, I don't know what will. Now he's making $2 million a year, and he's going to be one of the most sought after offensive minds in the game after this. They already is. It doesn't matter what happens in the next game. Um, he turned down Nick Saban and Alabama to stay at Washington because he felt like Washington was building something special. DeBoer has lost 2 games since he's been there. Um, they've got something going, obviously, and the offensive coordinator, Coach Grubb, there is just a fantastic story, and just one of the many storylines on this Washington team that makes them just a kind of like a Cinderella story in a way. I guess they are technically the outsiders, aren't they?
Hmm.
So, and if you guys didn't check that out, go check out our hype video. We put up a hype video. Okay, it's called "The Outsiders," and it's the Washington Huskies playoff hype video. However you want to, put that. It'll make you run through a brick wall. So if you haven't checked that out, I suggest that you do so and give us a like on that. We can't make any money on anything like that. We just doing it for fun, and we loved watching Washington this year. And congratulations again, it's been a lot of fun.